We cook this beef, we let it get cold, and then we serve it out? This recipe is called beef le vinaigre, or the vinegar beef. I can't wait to try this out. Thanks for joining us today on 18th Century Cooking. This recipe today comes out of The New and Easy Method of Cookery by Elizabeth Cleland, 1755, so it's kind of early, and this has a lot of Scottish influence in this particular cookbook. And it's interesting that she pulled this recipe out, and again, this one is strange in the fact that it's kind of served cold. It's a cold collation dish that has a lot of wine in it. It's even that vinegar kind of flavor here shows up. So it's definitely different than something that I'm normally used to. I'm not used to a bitter kind of flavor in a meat anyway, but it's going to be doing some very, very interesting things. Let me read to you this recipe. It's beef le vinaigre. Get a slice of beef 3 inches thick, most lean from the buttock. Stew it with a little water and a gill of white wine. Season it with salt and pepper, cloves, and a bundle of sweet herbs and a bay leaf. Let it boil till it is very tender, then set it a cooling, and when cold, serve it up with a slice of lemon and a little vinegar. Okay, so this one is tough to interpret. We can't just grab this recipe and do it. We actually have to think about what's going on here and put it together. Get a slice of beef 3 inches thick, most lean, no problem. Stew it with a little water and a gill of wine. Stop. And then it says season it with pepper, salt, cloves, herbs, bay leaf. Stop. Then it says let it boil till it is very tender, then set it a cooling, and when it's cold, serve it up. The problem here is she talks about stewing it, and then she talks about boiling it. Now, is that two different operations? Do we stew it and then we boil it? Or is this actually one operation, we stew it, boiling it, right? And I think that's what's actually going on. She doesn't say stew it, then take it out and put it in boiling water. She says stew it, boiling it this long. So this one can be tough, and you could do it several different ways. I think though the right way is to have this, you make up, you have it cooking in the pan and you just let it boil, stew until it's very tender. So we're gonna stew this up in a deep pan. I've got a deep fry pan here. We could use a Dutch oven, that would work great in this situation. We're gonna put some hot water in there and get that going. We need maybe a half a cup of water going on in this pan. We're gonna put our meat in. Once it's up to temperature, add a little bit, or our gill of wine, which is a 1/4 cup of wine. Put a little bit on top and put it into our stewing liquid. We're gonna let this cook a little bit before we do anything else. Once I flip this over, then we'll start to put in the spices. So let's talk about what's really going on with the wine here. It's a very, very important part of cooking this. It isn't, we could use just water, but it's not gonna work as well. Now, wine is gonna help break down this very tough beef. And beef can be tough in the time period, especially she called for lean beef. So we want this wine, the acid of the wine, to help tenderize the meat while it's cooking. It's gonna make it so much better. Once our beef has been stewing for a few minutes, now we can go to the spicing. Now this talks about salt, pepper, cloves. Well, we have something that's perfect for this. That's the kitchen pepper that we sell, the Townsends kitchen pepper. Wonderful for this dish. It has the salt, the pepper, and it has the cloves, which is kind of important. Also has a few things like nutmeg. Great mix, does it all in one. So kitchen pepper is great. You can check out our kitchen pepper on our website, townsends.us. Also, we've got these sweet herbs that go in, and we're just gonna put a little bundle of those. We can take them out later, and a bay leaf. Now that we've got the spices in, we're gonna let this cook down. As we turn it over, you can put a little spice right on top of the meat and then flip it back over. And we wanna add a little bit more water to it because again, it needs to boil as it were. So simmer, we need to make sure we have enough hot water in there to boil. And if you can, put a cover on this and it'll kind of hold that heat in and hold the flavors in at the same time. So we're gonna put a pie pan over the top of our skillet. There's nothing left to do but wait on this until it's done nice and tender. We sliced this up nice and thin, and it's cold. It's meant to be served cold. We've got our lemon slices. We've already poured our vinegar over the top. I'm gonna add just a touch of salt, and we can give one of these little pieces a try. Oh, let me add a little bit of lemon here. There we go. Let's find out just how this one turned out. Oh, a giant piece. You were.
No, how was it?
It's really, really good. You definitely want to cut this in smaller pieces. This is nice and tender, especially when it's cut nice and thin like this. And it would be just, you can see this on served with a bunch of other dishes. So that, obviously this isn't the main course. So a wonderful way to serve this beef. And while this is cooking, you're cooking other things at the same time, aren't you? So it is that kind of a dish that you would set on the table with 4 or 5 other things. The spices come right out in this. We definitely get some of those. You'd think they might get lost in that boiling, but no, they're here. And the vinegar, the lemon come through and change this dish. So this isn't, just a raw roast beef that you would, cook over the fire like we've done in the past. But that vinegar is giving you a nice little kick that is definitely a little different than just your typical roast beef. Every one of these recipes is a word problem. So just like in school when you had these math problems and it's like, what's going on with these? You have to figure out the formula for the recipe and understand what they actually mean by each one of these words. We can misinterpret them in our 200 years later vocabulary. So we do have to dig in on these to understand exactly what the original cook was really trying to get at. This dish will pair perfectly with another recipe we've done. Check this out.